Okay, good afternoon ladies and gentlemen. My name's Andrew and I'm with Project Bravo. Our project was to design a magic board game, which is basically a board game where the user plays against the computer and the computer makes its moves all on its own. We decided to go with a game of drafts, and this meant that we had to obviously be able to tell where all the pieces were on the board, and we had to be able to move the pieces around. So to do this, what we did was we put magnets inside all of the pieces, and we had a scanner with reed switches, which could tell where all the pieces were on the board, and then an electromagnet, which could then pick up the pieces and then move them around on the board itself. I was going to say a little bit about the game draft itself, but my team have told me that this is completely irrelevant, and I really apologise, but we're going to have to skip this slide and this slide. Sorry about that. So the AI was, we found a bit of open source code on the internet. It seemed to do what we wanted. It seemed okay. It was pretty rubbish, actually. It wasn't very good. So we used the algorithm that it had inside it and basically coded it all ourselves. All it did basically was search through a tree of all the possible moves, scoring the moves based on what the state of the board was, the number of pieces on the board, and picked the best move that it could then do. So yeah, and then the game logic itself was everything else to do with the game. So from working out what move was made by the user, so you'd have the initial board, you'd have all the pieces in their positions, and then you would scan the board and find where the sort of after the move had been made, and you could determine what move had been made by the differences between the two. That and being able to tell whether the move was valid. Obviously, having single pieces that can only move forward in the diagonal direction, so things like that, being able to tell. And then everything else, just up until basically being able to tell that it was the end of the game. The most important part really about our project was the software-hardware interface. We had Java, which did everything to do with the game. We had Verilog, which controlled basically all the components involved with the actual board itself. And we had to be able to get the two to work together. So we decided to do this sending streams of bits between the two, with the Java sending bits to the Verilog to tell it what moves to make on the board and when to do scans, for example, and the Verilog sending bits back to be able to let the Java know what the current positions of all the pieces were on the board. So this was extremely important. It was a bit boring, so I won't go into any more detail there. The hardware mechanics were probably most out of our comfort zone as computer scientists. I won't be changing tripods, I have to tell you that. I think I'll stick to what I know. We definitely have to thank Brian, our demonstrator, for making the massive, fantastic board that we've got upstairs, which a lot of you have seen. But everything from dealing with the stepper motors, which had to be glued on, dealing with the magnets within all the pieces, which had to be glued in, dealing with pretty much all the tracks on the board, which had to be glued on, and everything fell to bits and had to be glued on again, and then just reed switches and electromagnets and everything like that. All of this was controlled by the Verilog and made up the board itself. Yeah, so finally, this has not been proven wrong. So we can definitely say that we have a good board and a good AI. If it's not been, it probably can be beaten. To be honest, it wasn't that great. But yeah. We can say this for now. We can say this for now until proved otherwise. There is actually a drafts algorithm that has solved the game drafts, but we thought this wouldn't be very interesting and be a bit boring. So we went for something a little bit more fun that could be beaten. So other than that, yeah, thank you for listening to the presentation, and vote Bravo.